Good afternoon. My name is Martha Raymond, and I'm so pleased to be here today with Abigail Tooker. We're going to have a chat about the importance of colorectal cancer awareness and education and advocacy. I am the executive director of the GI Cancers Alliance and the founder of the Raymond Foundation. And again, it's a pleasure to be here today. I'd like to introduce Abigail, who is a good friend of mine. We met last fall when we were both working on the Rouge Symposium for Georgetown University, the annual Fighting a Smarter War Against Cancer Symposium. And I had the pleasure of working with Abigail then, so I'm so glad we're able to connect again today. So a brief introduction for Abigail. Um, she works at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital, and she's a stage 4 colon cancer patient at Lombardi Cancer Center, which is where she is right now. She continues to work on the mother-baby unit while actively receiving treatment. Abigail has a passion for teaching new nurses and is presently pursuing her master's in nursing education. And so with that, Abigail, I'd like to welcome you today and thank you for your time, and so glad that you're here.
Thank you so much, Martha. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. And I think the goal for both Abigail and myself today is to really kind of shine a spotlight on the importance of awareness and education. And like I mentioned, how important advocacy is for patients and the caregiver community as well. Um, so I'll start, Abigail, with just asking if you could give us a brief little snapshot of your diagnosis and kind of where you've been with your story as this cancer journey continues.
My pleasure. I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer in December of 2019. But previous to that, I still have ulcerative colitis. So I was diagnosed with that when I was 11, which we know, or not many people actually know this, but you're at an increased risk after diagnosis of 10 years. So you go for yearly screenings for colon cancer. At that point in my life, I was doing really well. So we were doing like every couple of years just because we all know colonoscopies aren't fun. But I started feeling pretty lousy in May of 2019, where it was like something's not right. So I started back on my infusions. I just wasn't working. And it was like, doc, like something's not right. Something's not right. This is different than the traditional flares that I had felt with ulcerative colitis. And I'm like, kept looking at my labs and just something wasn't adding up to me. So I kept pushing. I'm like, so what's the next step? What do we do at this point in time? And I had gone on vacation and I sat sick as a dog on a beach chair, trying to enjoy myself, but running to the bathroom like every 10 minutes and felt pretty terrible. And came home, and that's when it was like the weekend of Thanksgiving, where I had asked, like, what do we do now? And they sent me for a colonoscopy. And it was the first time with a colonoscopy that I had ever actually had the doctor take me into a conference room and go over what he saw with me. And he's like, this doesn't look good. And I was diagnosed in December of 2019. And then I started my journey with Lombardi in January of 2020. And I started with the idea that I was going to go in for treatment of getting surgery to have a total colectomy and get my ileostomy. So when we got in for surgery, it was January 24th, 2020, and it was worse than they expected. So I ended up doing biopsies. So they had biopsied the colon, I had my right ovary, and then it came back with it being worse than they thought. So they couldn't do the surgery safely. So they put my port in, and I started chemo 4 days later. And I did chemo every 2 weeks until April. And then they were able to go ahead. I got scan results were phenomenal. So I did really well on treatment, and I did I had a total colectomy on April 10th with the right oophorectomy, and I spent about a month in the hospital. And this is, mind you, during peak COVID. So, cancer, lonely, and then COVID with the isolation precautions, and then everybody's quarantined. So I was very alone, and I was very blessed to be here at Georgetown, because I always say that it takes really special nurses and doctors who work here. There's just something different about our spirit, I think. So I was very blessed to have them here. And then I healed really well, and I started chemo back up in June. And I did that until August. And then we went and started maintenance chemo. And I was on just oral and an infusion like every 3 weeks. And I was doing really well until December. And then in January of this year is when we just found that it spread, and nothing, we couldn't handle, nothing that, we couldn't nip in the butt, so to speak. So I'm back with getting infusions every 2 weeks now. But we have a plan, and we're really well, and I'm still working, and I'm, just taking it in strides. I think going through what I went through last year with the treatment, and knowing what I need to do this time around mentally and physically, I'm handling it better. And I'm more vocal now than I was in the beginning, like when I first started this journey.
Wonderful. And I echo what you say about the healthcare professionals. Georgetown Lombardi is amazing, and I met one of your chemotherapy nurses a minute ago, Kristen, and just amazing what they do. And I just they are our unsung heroes, and their dedication. And I've heard from so many patients that especially during COVID, when you couldn't bring somebody with you to the treatment area. Our nurses and healthcare professionals have just been such a lifeline. So I'm glad they were there for you as always.
Yeah, I mean, I'm partially because being a nurse, but I think the
Yeah,
nurses in this situation have had to really step up and not just be our nurses, but they're our companions. We look forward to seeing them. And I was telling Kristen, I've spent more time with them than I have most of my friends in the last year. So
absolutely. As we're all in our bubbles to stay safe and healthy. Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah. Um, One question I'd have, Abigail, is why did you decide to help pay it forward for patients by by sharing your story and sharing kind of your background, with when you were younger and GI issues. And I've got to say that for patients that do, help and come forward to share their experiences, it makes such a difference, especially for newly diagnosed patients. So I'd just be curious as to why that was important for you.
Well, for me, growing up, I was always pretty lonely. It's usually pretty embarrassing um, to talk about your bowel movements. You don't ever really want to tell people that you have those problems, and it's like I feel like a stigma, to say this is what's going on and speak up about it. So with this journey, I wanted to be more vocal, because I was diagnosed when I was 30. So I wanted to be able to make it known that this isn't just a problem that happens when you're older, that it can happen at any point in our lives, and we have to be able to figure out what's going on and make a difference, make a change, make it something that we're not afraid to talk about. I'm definitely not somebody who's afraid to sit there and say, I have cancer, and be willing to talk about it. Before this, I was always very much like, I didn't want people to know. I didn't want to be treated different. I didn't want to have like the stigma of having a medical illness or a disability. And I think having cancer is like, I don't want to say I wear it with a badge of honor, um, but it's so isolating that I don't want somebody else to go through that experience of feeling lonely and feeling like they don't have somebody to talk to, or they're the the symptoms that they experienced, they were afraid to go to a doctor, and it took them so long because they weren't sure because they're young.
Right.
So I don't want somebody else to go. So if I'm able to say this is what I was experiencing, and I think even for me having something that put me at a predisposition, I think it's even more important to get to that community saying that we do need to take it very seriously, because at any point it could be that one polyp, it could be that just one bad day, and if we catch it sooner, it's so much easier to treat than if we, wait out the symptoms and wait out until it's the point where it's harder. So I want to be able to have a voice for myself and a voice for other people, to know that they have outlets to find people who are able to advocate and help them through, their journey of figuring it out.
Right. And I couldn't agree more. And when you were saying that, it reminded me of I think such an important quote. Katie Couric said this years ago when I was at an awareness event where she was speaking, and she said, "Don't die of embarrassment." And I thought that was spot on. It still is because I think, like you said, especially when you're younger, maybe these are things you don't want to share as readily because it can be embarrassing, but there again, I think when we all know what to look for, and we're not embarrassed. I mean, it's life. I just think that's so important. So I think that mirrors exactly what you were saying. um
Right.
you know
And I spent so much of my life like being afraid of an ostomy, and not wanting that, and feeling like it would, sorry if I get emotional. I was always afraid that it would hinder, and it would slow me down.
right.
And in the last, it's almost, a year. So in the last year, having an ostomy has been so freeing, and so made me feel like I can live more of my life. And I'm not afraid to be, away from a bathroom where I'm like, oh,
Yep.
I don't have to run to the bathroom. This is great. And
Absolutely.
one of the things that I noticed, this round going through chemo is, you get really terrible diarrhea
Right.
and nausea and vomiting. So I was like, guess it's the benefit is that I'm not running and wondering which end it's going to come out of first.
Yep.
So, that's
Absolutely.
like the silver linings and the things that I find to make it easier. But having an ostomy has been something that has, really changed my life for a positive. And this was something that I always looked at as such a negative thing, that, oh, this would end my life, this would be a horrible thing to have. And now it's like, wow, you want to go for a bike ride, this is great, I don't have to be like, where's the closest bathroom, or I can't do that because I'm not feeling good. So
Right.
it's been
And I've
really,
heard that's good. I've heard that from other patients as well, that I think a lot of times it's that fear of the unknown. You hear that you might have to have an ostomy, and it obviously it's very scary. But I think, especially hearing your story as well, so many individuals say, I got used to it, and it's not bad at all. And if it saved my life, then it's certainly, worth making those adjustments that you need to. But I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely, definitely. If a newly diagnosed patient or caregiver or even a patient that's been on treatment for a while, if they wanted to get involved in advocacy, like you said, this time going through therapy, you were able to kind of speak up for yourself a little bit more. I don't know if that's the right word, but um, would you have any advice, or communication tips or anything like that for patients? Because I think so often patients feel that they want to get involved, they want to raise their voice, they want to be heard and share their experiences, but they don't know where to start, or if they're speaking with their healthcare professional, how could they, interact better, for more patient-centered care?
I think one of the the benefits that I have is being here at Georgetown is that a lot of the nurses and doctors are involved. So I was blessed with when I'd ask questions, had resources for me, and they gave me people to get in touch with and how to be able to have outlets of other patients and other people who have been through the same experience, and be able to share with me what helped with them, and stuff that they found was easier, like if they tried one thing and it didn't work, they said, well, what about this? One of the things is like my GI doctor got me involved with a company that does, they're called patient coaches, and they all had some type of GI cancer or illness, and they all had at one point had to experience some sort of surgery or had an ostomy. And I was able to be connected through them with one of my good friends now, Sarah, who actually was a stage 4 colon cancer survivor, and she's now NEDS. And she she's been one of the best sources for me in being able to push, because she had such a strong voice and with her experiences. So having her in my corner has helped, because I'm able to say, well, what about, what are we doing for the liver? Is there options? Are we doing like the best things? Because I know through other people's experiences that there are other options. And I think for me, we don't want to just hit the Google and search everything, because it comes up with the scariest things, and it's so quick to think, oh my god, am I dying? You get told like one thing and then your mind starts spinning. So I think being involved in advocacy helps let other people know that we're able to get through this. You're able to fight it, but you're also able to live and not stop your life, because it's so easy to feel alone through our struggles. So I think being able to be part of that and wanting to get involved so you're not alone is really important. I think with getting involved and having those resources, I mean, I was connected with you, Martha, through Georgetown. So I was very blessed that I had a hospital and a facility that is very open to advocacy and gave me those resources.
Right.
So I think that the one place I would start is asking, your doctors, if there, resources that about, people that I can connect with. And I definitely have noticed with Georgetown is they always say that we do have patients that are opened and we can give you their contact information and they'd be glad to talk, So that's one thing that I've been really blessed with, is having people that are open to advocacy and they're not afraid to have people speaking up for themselves.
Right. I think that's so important. And I agree. I think, the first place maybe is to ask your healthcare professional team, where do they go when they are looking for advocacy groups or resources? Because I think for all of us, it's building that community. And I think for a cancer patient, especially like you were saying, during our COVID times now, that we are also isolated, and the last thing we want anyone to feel is, especially going through a cancer treatment um, or a diagnosis, to be more isolated. So um, that's how I've always tried to build my community throughout the years, and I know that's what you're doing, and
Yep.
it gives you the feeling that you're not out there alone, and others are there to give you that support and tips that help them get through things, et cetera. So I'm glad that you're building that as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very happy to be able to advocate for, people who have gone through and are going through the struggles with cancer and cancer treatment. It's something that brings me a lot of pride, and um it's, you don't, I still struggle. It's, I still wonder some days, I'm like, am I doing the right things? Am I, how do I get involved? And how do I make my voice heard without it being, received in in a negative way? Because I think sometimes I've noticed one thing is with like the ostomy community is a lot of people lead, um, with like the bag, and I don't want us to, be feeling like we have to hide behind it. I want it to be something that this doesn't define us. This isn't who we are. This is what helped us live our lives.
Absolutely.
Um, and that's the voice that I want really for people to be able to hear, is that we're still us.
Right.
We just had modern medicine be able to give us a longer time here.
Absolutely. And this is just a chapter. It's not the whole story by any stretch, and I always think that's important for all of us, no matter what we're going through, is to think, this we're going to get through this, and this will not be our whole life story. It will just be a portion of it, and we'll grow stronger, more resilient, more empowered, whatever that might be throughout that journey, throughout that story. That's kind of how I always kind of put things into perspective when I need to.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder too, Abigail, and kind of in closing, because I know you're receiving your treatment, and I don't want to keep you too long today, but um, as a healthcare professional, and then also as a patient, um, has that been has that been more difficult for you? Because I'm just thinking, so much more than kind of a traditional patient because you are a healthcare professional. So I would just be curious what your thoughts were on that.
So it's almost like it's hard and it's easy at the same time. So me and my mom both are nurses, and I've been very blessed to have her because instead of me going, she's able to start an IV and give me fluids and things like that. So if I know I'm circling dehydration, I have that option. But one of the hardest things since this like started was everybody was like, "Oh, well, you're a nurse, you know." And I'm like, "I'm a women's services nurse. I take care of laboring women and newborn babies. I don't like this is out of my wheelhouse. I've never, changed an ostomy. I've never done that." So a lot of it came with having to learn more about a topic that I've never been, you know, really versed in other than when I was in nursing school. But I think one of the things that became easier was that I know how to research resources. So when I was doing my own research, I knew what to look up and what would be an appropriate, source versus an inappropriate source, and advocacy and being a voice. And that was something that I had a very hard time because I was like, I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to be needy. I don't want to be a bother. Um, so that was something in the beginning that I had to overcome. And one of the things that was said to me is, what do you do for your patients? Like, how do you advocate for them? And what would you say to take care of them? What would you do for them is what you have to do for yourself. And that was something that really changed how I was taking care of myself, because at that point it was like, no, I was like, I need to make sure my doctor knows that I, spent 12 hours, throwing up, and I haven't been able to drink any fluids. And so that was something that I got better at as time went on. So being a nurse in those aspects have helped a lot. And I think being able to advocate for myself and for our um, cancer patients has been something that I've been more vocal about. And with COVID, we're alone and we don't have, our visitors with us. They get to come to our doctor's appointments, but they can't be here with us on infusions. I mean, this is a great thing for me to be able to talk with you and share this with, because you guys are spending time with me right now while I'm getting treatment. So I'm not alone. I have you guys with me. And I think advocating and talking to my nurses and seeing what their thoughts are so that we can speak up as a whole. As me being a nurse here at Georgetown and being a patient, I have both sides. I have both insights. So me being somebody, I have started to advocate more for what we're doing for our patients because COVID's not going away. This is something that we're going to have to figure out. But as cancer patients, we're alone. And our journey, a lot of it is lonely because people don't know what it's like unless we're going through it. So, being that I am a nurse, I do have a voice that can get both avenues. So, I want to make sure that I'm using it in the right manners to make sure that we're getting the right care and the same, treatment for us that we have for, other, patients. Because we don't want to be sitting here alone for a good portion of our day, when we could have people who want to spend time with us. So I think that being able to have the voice as a nurse, and a patient is very important and something that I want to make sure that I'm using in the right way.
Well, you absolutely are, and you're an inspiration for sure. And just so appreciate your time today. And we're wishing you all the best always. You know that. And so, again, I just want to thank you. And I think for everyone listening, raising that awareness of colorectal cancer, education, outreach for patients, knowing they're not alone. Um, there are support systems. And I'm so glad we got a chance to chat today, Abigail. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Martha. I'm glad to be here for you and for everybody.
Great. Thanks again.